Hello and welcome. Yes, I know you're probably sat somewhere watching the Subway, Continental, Leaguey, FA Cuppy type cup thing that's going on at the moment. And yes, it's 1-1. But let's be honest, this just saves Connor a little bit of work when it comes to downloading and setting it up all over again. Because you can watch this anytime you want over the course of the next week. It's Lower League Lingo 20. We are back. We're going to be looking at Tier 5 and we're going to be doing it in just the other side of this. Yes, indeed. Hello and welcome once again. We have got a fun-packed show that I think we are quite looking forward to. The pair of us taking our BDIs round Tier 5. All 8 leagues will be mentioned. We'll have a little chat again about the County Cups as well. So that is that. But you will see there's only 2 of us today because Gareth is currently sat at the Sports Village watching Manchester United 1, Manchester City 1. So fair play to the guy, I suppose, really, and that's a good game of football. So we'll let him have that. But what it does mean is that he's phoned in his reports today. So this is going to require technical knowledge that I think is way, way, way beyond anything that I possess. But we shall see. John, lovely to have you with us, though. How are you doing today? Everything all right?
Yeah, very well, thank you. I've got my Man United top on, so I don't know if this all for Welsh is biased or not, but I think we all know each other Man United fans anyway. So brilliant to have that one on in the background. And I'm pretty sure Gareth turned up at about 1:30, didn't he, in the group chat at Lee Sports Village? So he was there nice and early whilst I was hard at work. But all good my end. Thank you, Barry.
He did. And to be fair, if the shirt didn't give it away, the name that you stuck on the
Yeah,
is right there. And indeed, MUFC should well give that up, but let's not hold that against us, eh? So there we go. Well, listen, we're going to kick off with the Northeast Regional Women's Football League. Actually, Northwest Regional Women's Football League, but it does require just a brief moment of either brilliance or terrible work from me. So we are going to give it a darn good try, and hopefully, with a bit of luck, it's all going to work beautifully. But of course, this is live television, and as a result, these things have the ability to go incredibly wrong. So we're going to give it a try. I've got that set as I want it. So with a little bit of luck, if I now click this button just here and this button just here, and then finally this button here, we should be able to see Gareth. Can you see Gareth, John?
It's as if he's really here. I can see him.
It is as if he's really here. So let's give him a try. Because listen to this as well for an intro. Bless him. He's really, really done his best here to make sure this goes well. So I'm going to mute us because we genuinely don't need to be heard right now. The problem having about 7 million tabs open. That doesn't help at all. There we go. Right. So let's mute me and this.
Hello from the past. Sorry you can't be there live, but recording this to give you a run through of the regional leagues in the north of England. I will start with the Northwest Regional League. I've said before, this is a fantastic league for the neutral, and I think the way it's shaping up at the moment is exactly evidence of that. If we look
That's not the best of starts, is it? What's happened to him there?
Yeah, he's just buffering
well, and then he just...
Yeah, there he is. Is he back?
Oh dear, that's a genuine shame. I thought it was going to go quite well, and it was going really well for about 30 seconds there, and now it just seems to have dropped, unfortunately.
If we look at the competition, we've got the entire bottom half of the table from Bury in 6th, right the way down to FC United in 11th, separated by only 3 points. Now, there is a large kind of discrepancy in the number of games played. Fleetwood on 11 points have played 11 games, whereas FC United on 10 points have played 16. So things will shake out a little bit, and some teams will pull away and some teams will get dragged in. But it's really starting to shape up. We've got the top half of the table as well, all those top 5 sides. Mancunian Unity, once they've played some of their games in hand, they're on 10, 17 points at the moment. That they should start to shake around a little bit. But those top 3 sides, Darwin top on 32 points, Curzon and Ashton second on 30 points, Wythenshawe third on 29. Again, a discrepancy in the amount of games played. Wythenshawe with 3 games in hand on Darwin, 3 points behind, and 4 games in hand on Curzon, 1 point behind. You would expect, again, when those games in hand shake out, it's likely that Wythenshawe will end up at the top. But there is still a title race there to be had. Stranger things have happened in football. Obviously, personally, I hope that stranger things don't happen this season. But it's definitely shaping up to be interesting, particularly when you look ahead to the games that are due to take place this coming weekend. So this weekend, there's kind of a spattering of different things going on. Some teams don't have a game. So currently, at the time of recording this, neither Wythenshawe, nor Crewe, nor Darwin are playing games. Tranmere will play Macclesfield in the League Cup, and West Didsbury will play Preston in the League Cup. And then there's 3 league games, and all 3 of these league games are huge. So Curzon Ashton host Mancunian Unity, which again is a big game towards the top. Unity can kind of close that gap on those teams in front. Curzon with a win will go back to the top of the table. So that's a huge game for both of those sides. The most intriguing games, though, come from the bottom. Fleetwood play Salford City, and a win for Fleetwood will move them on to 14 points, pull them away from that bottom end, those 3 teams on 10. Salford are one of those 3 teams on 10 points. So even a point, ideally 3, but a point for them will give them a little bit of safety, at least over Crewe, who aren't playing. So there is the opportunity to pull away from that bottom side. The other game is massive. FC United host Bury. FC United currently sit bottom on 10 points. Bury currently in 6th on 13. Now, a win for either of these sides is huge. A win for Bury, and they move 6 points clear of FC, and FC only have 9 points left to play for in the last 3 games of the season, which could, more or less pull Bury clear of that relegation fight and give them a real sense of security. FC United, if they lose that game, will be sat bottom of the league, 10 points, 3 games to play, and their next game will be against Wythenshawe. So there's real struggle surrounding that if they don't win this game. A win, definitely.
Is it worth pausing with Barry and then he might catch up? He might just need to buckle up.
The cup game, and so we'll drag them away from that relegation zone, 3 points clear of Crewe, which will be huge. So whoever comes out on top of that game is massive. Yeah, a hugely important game that I'll definitely be paying attention to at the coming weekend. And that's pretty much it for the northwest of the table. I will be back shortly for a run through of the.
There we go. Fair play to Gareth there for managing to phone in his report there, which is quite good. I don't know. How did that watch for you, John? Did that come across okay?
Yeah, just like the last couple of minutes, it just started to be a little bit slower. But yeah, I think just while that was buffering, I just think the things that come to my mind when it comes to like regional leagues, tier 5, tier 6, county cups, they're all so Derby-esque, aren't they? Because they're all so close together. You forget, he was talking about Bury there and highlighting, Bury and FC United, and you just think like it's not like the National League where they are millions of miles away up and down the country. I like the regional, like I like the fact that it's close together.
No, absolutely. And for those who are visual learners rather than just listening to what Gareth said there, unfortunately, I can't put both things up at once. I don't think it wouldn't have worked quite as well as we'd have liked it to. But as you can see, that's exactly what Gareth was talking about there. So if you'd like to look at that again, you can just pause this right now and have a look. Interesting live news is currently Manchester United 1, Manchester City 2. They've just scored on the cusp of half time. So there we go, little update for you there, even though it's not lower league. Thought I'd throw that one out there for you. So it's over to Mr. John, who is going to look at a bit of a brand new one for you, John, the East Midlands Premier. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've learned delving into this? It's the first time that we've had the East Midlands Premier. It's the premiere of the East Midlands League. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned and what you've seen and what you can see the story unfolding.
So what I've done is I've looked at 4 different games, but 3 of them are County Cup games. I thought we were going to focus more on County Cup than the actual league. But what I will just do is just give people a bit of an insight into who doesn't necessarily know regional leagues and district leagues on this side of the country. So as we all know, Tier 3's North and South. Tier 4, then Midlands comes into it, so you're in the Midlands, and then Tier 5, you've actually got West Midlands and East Midlands. So your West Midlands is very much like Kidderminster Harriers, a very household name. East Midlands, you've got like Mansfield there, so that's the kind of area in the country that you're looking at. And then what I like particularly when doing a bit of research and looking into a bit more detail, it's the Tier 6 is set up slightly differently to the West Midlands. So East Midlands, you've got the Premier, but you've also got a North, South and Central, which means that there's 3 teams that get relegated from the East Midlands Tier 5, and then 3 teams get promoted, whereas the West Midlands is just 2 up, 2 down. So I am definitely going to focus a lot more on this now that the league's taking shape. There's just a lot of names that I've just never really heard of. So looking into it, it was quite exciting. You've got a lot of development teams in Tier 5, Tier 6 of the East Midlands that you would have heard of. For example, Northampton Town. So Northampton Town played in the County Cup. Shall I talk about the County Cup on the east side now, or are we doing that a bit later, Babby?
I think we're going to do that just after I've done my one, because then you can have a look about that. And whilst you're chatting about your bit on that, I'll try and get Gareth so he doesn't buffer for the next one.
No problem. Well, what I will do is I will just mention that clash. So there was a game on the East Midlands, and I know that we always talk about this in the County Cups, how emphatic the score lines are. So, but there was a game in the East Midlands division where it was Division 1 Central, so it's the league below this one, Barry, but it was 15-0, and it's not very often you see 15-0 score lines in the league. It's not. You see it in the County Cup. You might see like full-time teams in Tier 3 taking on the bottom teams in Tier 3, but even that's not 15-0. So I am just going to shout out just an East Midlands match, teams that I've never covered before. Loughborough Foxes Vixens, they're called. They were top of Division 1 Central, and they played bottom of the league, Brookside Athletic. And you had 2 players who both scored 5 goals. Alicia Davies scored 5, and Harker Gill scored 5. So it was top versus bottom, but that really does show the level. So maybe, Loughborough are top of that league, and they're going to get promoted and really make a push in a year's time to get into National League level, because with that kind of scoreline, something's gone somewhere. Either they've really heavily invested and they're running away with the league, or unfortunately maybe Brookside Athletic is going the opposite direction.
No, absolutely. And this weekend, obviously, we know was full of County Cup action. There was only the one game in the East Midlands Premier, which was Mansfield against Nottingham Trent, and that was 1-1. When you look at that again, you talk about the level. That's Nottingham Trent, who are in 9th, desperate to get out of that relegation zone. That could well be a very important point on their journey to get in there. So the 26th next week does see a fair few matches going on there. You've got Grimsby Borough against Nottingham Trent University in their league plate. But the other league games, you've got Mansfield Town will play Anstey Nomads, which is another great name. There's some fantastic names in the lower league. There really is. Rotherham United will play Basford United, which again looks, it's not that exciting, I suppose, on that one. You've got Sheffield FC against Chesterfield, which is massive up there at the top of the table. Whoever wins that gets the advantage moving into the home straight. And then you've got Stamford AFC against the SJR Workshop. And I would love to know what that means. Is that the Sir Jim Ratcliffe Workshop? I mean, what's going on there? But yes, you've got Stamford against SJR Workshop. And again, you look down at the bottom there, and that's massive for Workshop there. So some huge games for people to look forward to on the East Midlands. And again, something that we will be looking at over the course of the next few weeks, which moves it over to the Eastern region, which is, of course, where I spend a fair amount of my life. And as you can see here, it's not had a huge amount of action over the last few weeks, mainly due to the weather. I think we'll find that most of the leagues haven't had that many games going on over the last few weeks. But in this one, not really too much to change at the top, and that's because why would there be? You look at Royston Town, they've been miles out ever since we introduced the league. We've mentioned that. But the big thing that comes from this one is that Luton were only ever able to level up with Royston, but Royston had a game against Dewsendale and Hellersden last weekend, and quite a result that ended up being. Actually, it wasn't Dewsendale, it was St Albans, and they drew 1-1. They've got Dewsendale next week, so they drew 1-1. And as you can see, St Albans not doing too bad mid-table, but for Royston, that's just opened the door slightly for Luton. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a massive ask. They've got to win 5 games in hand, and the longer you leave it, the more likely you are that you're going to have to play weekend, midweek to try and catch up. But as it stands, if they were to win those 5 games in hand, they would go top of the table by 2 points. So the door has just been left open for Luton Town. The question will be, can they sneak through it? And what will they do? So huge results there. There's only one other game that was played at the weekend, because again, there was lots of County Cup action going on. And that was Stevenage against Watford Ladies Development. Earlier on in the season, Stevenage drew 2-2, a late last-minute equaliser from Gemma Croucher, ensuring that Borough got the point with Watford. No such luck this time around for either side. It was a superb half from Stevenage. It really was. They absolutely bossed the whole game. Gemma Croucher with a 7-minute hat-trick and absolute worldies from Hannah Bodley and Hannah Nebbit meant that Stevenage got the win and put themselves back into 4th. But as you can see, it feels like a bit of a fight for 3rd at the moment. Haringey, let's be honest, have had a lot of games. There are other teams below them with games in hand likely to take that position. It all comes down to whether or not Luton can take advantage of their games in hand and chase down Royston, as to whether or not the likes of Haringey or Stevenage will steal the runners-up spot as it stands, because the top spot is some difference. Even if Stevenage were to win their games in hand, they would be on 27, so there's still a sort of 7-point differential there between the top and them. When you look at the bottom, Cambridge City doing a little bit better on 6 points, still 5 off of Wroxham though. Needham Market struggling there on 9 as well. Huge games to come for lots of the teams. And as we mentioned, Dewsendale will be at home to Royston this weekend. Enfield Town will play Watford Ladies. We have got Haringey against St Albans City. Luton will play Cambridge City, so they will feel that is certainly a game where they can get the 3 points. And of course, Needham Market will be playing Wroxham, which, as you can see down there, is huge. If Needham Market can get that, they will put Wroxham into the relegation zone. If not, Wroxham will move 5 points clear of the relegation zone. At this point of the season, that is scary. The last game that we've got, of course, will be Bowers and Pitsea, that is, against Stevenage FC. And of course, that's quite a big game in terms of both sides getting into really the top four, I suppose, is what you're looking at there. So some big games coming up before the League Cup matches that will be coming up the week after. But again, a really, really interesting league, especially when you look down to the fact that in ninth with 14 points is Watford, and then in fourth with 18 points is Stevenage. It's incredibly tight. And that middle of the table, who knows who's going to finish where. It's a bit like watching the old athletics where people are running around the track. You get a couple that lead out on the top, you've got a big pack in the middle, and then you've got a couple that are just hanging around at the back, and anything could happen there. So that's the Eastern region. Yeah, in terms of where we are there. So I'm going to stop sharing that just for a moment. And we're going to take that now just to go into the County Cup briefly, because we spoke about this last week, John, and we mentioned how, we think the County Cup's a good thing. We should include the goals and all of that sort of thing. I was looking through the WNL scores, just like I do now, just to see what's going on in those leagues. And the Northern Premier had a full list of games. They weren't worried about County Cup. But I was looking through some of the other leagues. We had Northampton. They won their County Cup game just about close, 19-0. Leeds, they won theirs 21-0 with Amy Woodruff scoring 7. She scored a third of the goals. 7 in a game is blowing my mind somewhat. You'd be lucky as a team to score 7. She got all 7. But not to be outdone, Alice Higginbottom for Loughborough decided that she was going to score 7 as well in the midst of a 27-0 battering. 27. And I think that game was only about 8-0 at half. I say only 8-0 at half time. And they go on to score like another 19 goals. You mentioned your County Cup one in the East Midlands that was 15-0. I don't know what to think about these, because on the one hand, for the team that's getting bopped, it's not fun. And, it's bad enough. We all know what it's like. You've gone 6-0, 7-0 down. It's not fun. But 27-0 or 20 or even 19, that feels excessive. I'm thinking of this from like a social media point of view. I'd have stopped tweeting. You would have thrown a towel. Somebody was like, no, we can't keep tweeting about this. It's not fair to the other side. Did anything sort of stand out for you when you were looking through the results, and what did it change your mind in any way from what we'd said beforehand when we were sort of previewing it?
Yeah, so we spoke about that with Barry, and you said exactly what we spoke about before, about the social media aspect. When do you is it like damage? It's a damaging your brand, it's damaging the County Cup brand. It's not great at all. It's who's going to be learning from it, because the team that's winning aren't learning anything from it, and the players who keep getting battered, all they're going to learn is resilience. And I was like, it's a big thing in football is resilience, but it's still not fair, is it? So, I think Gareth mentioned seedings, and then I mentioned the Worcester County Cup. Do that. So you got like the bigger named teams coming in the quarter final, which we can discuss shortly. I think that has to be the way to go. If you're in a certain league, or if you've got a certain amount of funding or something like that, then you can't go playing in the anything before the quarterfinals, because it's just not fair, is it? And if you have a look in the Worcestershire Cup, you've probably got 2 teams that's decent, and I think the rest of them are all like tier 6, tier 7, and they're going to get battered, aren't they? It doesn't matter how good they're doing in their own league. The standard is just too much of a gap. But then you can argue in the leagues as well, can't you? When you look at tier 3, there's a massive gap there. Okay, not 15, 20-0. However, what scoreline would you say is enough? Is it 10-0? 10-0 in a league game isn't right. And you do see that very close to it in tier 3, where some of these teams now are pumping in like £500,000 upwards, and some can't even get 100 grand upwards. Some can't even get 50 grand upwards. So I suppose how much is enough. We saw it last season with Calcio in the County Cup. I'm sure they won something like 35-0, and they took an absolute battering from the public because of the tweeted it. But it's not their fault. You could say it's more disrespectful if they did take their foot off the pedal, or take a couple of players off and play with 9 players, or create some sort of rule where every player has to touch the ball before you take a shot. So Yeah, very awkward for both teams. Very awkward for the county cup, whoever's whatever county it's in. But yeah, it's not helping anyone, is it, to do that? There is always the option to maybe play some of the youngsters. That there's nothing wrong with that. So if you have got like a under-18s team or a reserve or development team, if they're not in the county cup themselves, then maybe they can get a bit of game time. But still, it's some emphatic score lines there.
It's definitely something to look at. Definitely something to look at. And it'll be interesting to see as we move throughout the season. The scorelines you would imagine should change and become a little bit tighter. But yeah, some big results there. Okay. Gareth, can you hear us, sir? Are you alive? Are you ready to tell us a bit more about the North East Regional Women's Football League?
So let's have a chat about the North East Regional League.
There he is.
Also a league where there's a huge disparity in the terms of the games that have been played by certain teams. What we see at the moment is teams like Bradford, Spennymoor, Sunderland, South Shields, for example, Chester the Street, single-digit games, whereas there are sides like Harrogate and Ponteland United who are way over halfway through the season on 12 and 13 games respectively. So that's interesting in terms of the disparity again there, and so certain things will shake out in the wash, I think, there. But what I think we're looking at here is again a league with a real strong relegation battle, and the title race starting to move away from being too much of a race. Chester the Street have played 8 games, currently sits second on 22 points, 2 points behind Ponteland United. But with 5 games in hand, it's tricky to see them not going back to the top of the table once they've all this said and done. The middle of the table is particularly interesting. Bradford, Spennymoor, Sunderland, West End, South Shields, all on either 7 or 8 games on either 12 or 13 points. So lots to play for with those sides, particularly when you look at, Bradford and Spennymoor, 6 games in hand on Ponteland United. Can they start to put a run of results together and really push for that top end of the table? Maybe not push Chester the Street too far, but at least put some pressure on to make mistakes matter, push on for second, third in that league, really stake a claim that you deserve to be towards the top. We know that finishing position is hugely important when it comes to preparing for future seasons. So even if there's no sort of title race there, that coming second would definitely help when in terms of kind of planning and looking to recruit, for example, for next season. So all to play for with those sides. And then we look towards the bottom end of the table. And at the moment, it seems like Hull United and Harrogate are the 2 sides in that relegation scrap. Hull United with 2 games in hand on Harrogate. Hull United bottom with 5 points. Harrogate second bottom in 10th with 8 points, but with inferior goal difference compared to Hull United. So this weekend's games are huge. Harrogate don't play this weekend. With 11 sides in the league, one team is going to have a week off every week. Hull United do play. They have a tough trip to Alnwick Town, but again, an opportunity for them to go. Probably not a huge amount of expectation on them to get the win, but if they do, that will move them off the bottom spot and will put Harrogate back in the relegation zone. So all to play for there between Alnwick and Hull. We mentioned some of those teams in the mid-table: Bradford, Spennymoor, Sunderland, South Shields. They all have tough games. Bradford play Sunderland, so that instantly there is an opportunity for one of them to start to stake a claim to be at the top. Chester the Street host South Shields again, so an opportunity for South Shields to show what they're made of. I know in the past we've discussed South Shields when they were there towards the top end of the table. So an opportunity for them to show what they're made of. Ponteland will need to beat Spennymoor Town, again, who are in that midfield battle in order to stay at the top of the table. So a tough game for them as well there. And again, an opportunity for Spennymoor to show what they're made of and what they're about. And then the last game from this weekend is Wallsend against York Railway Institute. These are sides currently 5 points clear of Hull in that bottom spot, 8th and 9th respectively. So a win for either of these sides will move them 8 points clear, depending on the Hull result. Either 8 or maintain that 5 point gap if Hull win over the bottom spot. So some huge games kind of towards the top end of the table, the opportunity for Chester Street to go back to the top, the opportunity for some of those sides in the mid-table to start to stake a claim for who's going to be best of the rest potentially, and put pressure on Chester Street. And then there are some big games towards the bottom end of the table as well. Definitely one to keep an eye on, especially when some of those games in hand start to shake out. And I'll be back hopefully next week in person properly, so I won't have to come to you from a videotape that has been pre-recorded. So thank you, Barry, John. I'll hand back over to the pair, your capable hands.
I think what I love most about it, and I really do, is how he's included the little segues and the links in between to sort of go, hello, I'm here, and we'll go back over to you. Lovely. Gaza, that is superb effort. Well done, sir. Massively, massively pleased with that. And, of course, it would be wrong of us not to just, again, for the visual learners, just have the opportunity to see what it was that Gareth was talking about there in terms of the league. And as you can see, it's quite a big one. But it's that Chester Street one is the big one. They are 5 games behind, but only 2 points. It would seem almost inevitable that they are going to go to the top of the league, but they don't know. They've got to win at least one of those 5 games in order to do it. So big things happening in the Northeast there. Okay, Johnny boy, it's over to the West Midlands, a place that you know much better and where you feel at home. Talk to us about the West Midlands. Lytown staying top. What happened to Shifnal?
That's a great point. So first of all, I mean, all eyes were on that game, first against second. Kidderminster Harriers played in the Worcester County Cup, so obviously they weren't playing in the league, hence why they've got 2 games in hand. Kidderminster Harriers won 6-0 in the County Cup against Sporting Bromsgrove. Kiddy Harriers are like 3rd in Tier 5. Bromsgrove Sporting were 5th in Division 1. So that's obviously in the County Cup. We had Shrewsbury Town playing in the Shropshire County Cup. They're 7th in Tier 5, and I was playing a team that's not in the regional leagues. I believe they're in the district leagues. So they won 11-0 in their County Cup. So if you look at the top of the league, it really was first against second. No one else anywhere near them, really. And Shifnal came into this game on the back of 2 defeats. Before Christmas, they lost, I think, 5-3 against Camden Court. It's in my head as 5-3. I think it's roughly like that, which was a massive shock. And then they played Lye after Christmas and lost that game. And then they played them again in the league. And this time they managed to get a draw. So great news for the neutrals. It's really smashed this league wide open again now, because for the first time this whole season, it's out of Shifnal's hands. You know, even if Shifnal win all their games now, they're not going to play Lye again. So it's down to Lye now. So if Lye continues to go through the season unbeaten, then they will win. However, Kidderminster Harriers now with 2 games in hand. If they win all their games, then it's on them as well. Obviously, Lye and Kiddie haven't played each other at all yet, so they have to play each other twice. And I know that you usually ask me what's your game of the week for this weekend. Well, on the 26th of January, Lye are at home against Kiddie Harriers. So it's took until after Christmas for all these big guns to play each other. Lye have took 4 points off Shifnal, and Lye haven't played Kiddie Harriers just yet. So I don't think I don't think this league is about. I don't think it's about going unbeaten. I don't think it's about winning every game from now till the end of the season, because we've seen that anyone's capable of winning anyone at the moment. You know, Shrewsbury's really up and down when it comes to them being a fantastic cup team, but not so great in the league. You got Solihull Sporting, who's getting better and better now. They've signed a few Solihull Moors players, and they're getting there. So I generally don't think it's a case of if you lose this game, you're out of the title race. I don't think it's like that this season. However, you'd much rather be in the driving seat, wouldn't you? And to have 2 games in hand like Kiddie Harriers, who are still recruiting very well, even after the summer, they've continued the recruitment. They've signed 5 players since the summer who have all added to the squad. It's a massive turnaround compared to the opening 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, all eyes on the top of the league for me, and same again the 26th of January as well.
That's massive. That is really huge. And like you say, 3 teams there, all going at it, big guns swinging out against each other, and that's huge. Lytown against Kidderminster, like you say, Kiddie win that. They feel like they are in that driving seat, even though they wouldn't be quite on the top of the table. It'd still be a point off of Lytown. It would definitely feel a lot nicer than being 7 points behind. And of course, to draw, in which case it's still then advantage lies. So lots of different permutations in that league there. Other games that are going on, Burton Albion will be playing Alvechurch. So that's quite a biggie there in the middle of the table. We've got Coventry Sphinx against Port Vale, which is huge there, 9th and 10th. Coventry would love to pull away from Solihull, that's for sure. It's 5-2, the game that you were talking about with Camden Court there, and that's Knoll Ladies who'll be playing Camden Court next. Like Knoll needs a win, doesn't he? Like it's deal or no deal time. Got to get there. So massive for them there. And of course Shrewsbury against Solihull Sporting, and Leek Town will be playing Shifnal. And like you say, Shifnal, I alluded to it at the beginning of the conversation. They were doing really, really well, and they were sort of had a bit of a stranglehold on the league, but a couple of dodgy defeats, and now all of a sudden it is wide open, and that's what happens in football, which is what makes it so much fun. So there we go. That was the West Midlands. Well done. London South East. Not a huge amount of football, I have to be honest, being played across these here parts. When they have been played, there have been cups and FA Cups and all sorts of things going on. We've spoken about Fulham's exploits in the FA Cup as well. This weekend, literally nothing. Not a sausage. It was all County Cup, so not a lot at all for people to get their teeth into. But it doesn't change the fact that it's really the middle of the table that is having a little bit of a turnaround. Now, Dorking Wanderers are an interesting side. They are a side that you would have hoped would have done, I think, a lot better than they have. But a couple of tricky ones, especially the draw to Millwall Lionesses earlier on the 12th. So a couple of weeks ago, not the most helpful for Dorking Wanderers, and it has meant that they have given up a little bit of space to Dartford. Now we know that Dartford, again, have just sort of taken this league a little bit by surprise, but they've had some great results in the Cup over the last couple of weeks, but equally they drew with Ebbsfleet at the middle of December. So again, a bit like your one that you were talking about, John, lots of little sort of slips and trips happening, and so you don't really, even though it's 3 or 4 points, you don't really ever feel comfortable, which is, of course, I mean, let's be honest, you never feel comfortable in football, really, do you? So that's where they stand with that. Obviously, looking at the bottom, you've got Haywards Heath not looking too good at the bottom, as we have mentioned before, but Ashford United certainly looking like they have a way out. And next week, there will be football, weather permitting. We have lots of League Cup stuff going on as well, but there are 4 Premier matches going on. You've got Millwall Lionesses against Dartford. Well, I don't need to tell you how important that's going to be for Dartford. Millwall looking like they're out of the title race, so nothing in it for them there. They're not going to get relegated. They're very much playing for pride now, but they can have a huge say in what's going on in terms of promotion to the WNL. You've also got Haywards Heath, bottom, as we mentioned. They've got to play Barking, who've been dropping down the league marginally. You've also got New Haven against Fulham FC, and that's pretty big for both sides. Fulham still in with a huge shout because they have 5 games in hand over Dartford. So although Dartford are doing superb, they're 10 points clear of Fulham, but Fulham can, of course, go 5 points clear of Dartford if they're able to get their wins in. So that one against New Haven, who, of course, would also love the points in order to pull further away from Ashford United, is quite a big one. If I was doing a match of the week, that would probably be my one, I think, right there, to kind of see where that one's going to go. And the last one, Sport London e Benfica against Ashford United, which again has got its own permutations right there, with the fact that they are 10th and 11th respectively. Win for Ashford, and they are out of the bottom 3. But a win for Sport London, all of a sudden Ashford and Haywards Heath are really starting to look at that and panic. So big games coming up over the weekend for the London and South East Regional. And I think, again, all of these leagues, and the purpose of us doing this show today is just to show you that if there's no WSL football going on, or even if there is, get yourself down to your local leagues, because honestly, there's some great stories unfolding, and it will really give you a good opportunity to see some cracking football and some great entertainment with some superb stories being told as well. Now, 2 more leagues that we're just going to look over quickly. And John and I are just going to do this in like a discussion because neither of us really know a huge amount about the Southwest and the Southern League. So this is the Southwest Premier. It may not be quite the right badge. I'm not sure. That's the quickest one I can find on Google. So if there's any badge spotters out there, don't send any messages into John or myself. But it will do. You know what I'm getting at. But it's the right colour scheme, whatever happens there. So it does look quite nice. And again, when it comes to the Premier Division, you're looking at Marine Academy Plymouth, which is, again, a great name. Stood at the top of the league, 27 points. They're 5 points clear of Forest Green Rovers, but Forest Green have got 2 games in hand over them, so lots to play for there. You've got Torquay United, but they've got 3 games in hand, so they could very much get to 28 points. Then you've got Sherborne, who also have the 3 games in hand, and they could get exactly on to 27 as well. So you look at the top 4, anybody's, could be anybody's in that one there. When you start looking at the bottom, AFC St Austell, only team in Tier 5 yet to get a point, with the exception of obviously the -2 that we just saw, but that kind of doesn't count because they've lost them. But it's not looking good, is it, for those 2 teams that we've just looked at? Bishop's Lydiard, of course, on 7 points, just above them, and Poole Town and Pucklechurch and AEK Bocco, what a name that is, also on the rise. So looking at that, AFC St Austell got bopped by Torquay United at the weekend, 5-1. Forest Green beat Frampton 2-1. And Pucklechurch drew with Marine Academy, which will probably annoy Marine Academy because a win would have been incredibly helpful for them in terms of trying to beat off some of those teams below. But yeah, any sort of opening thoughts just looking at that league, John? There's a few things taking place.
Yeah, well, first of all, what a name! Like you say, Pucklechurch is fantastic. What I've learned quite recently is it's okay to have games in hand, but when you're towards the bottom half of the league, those games in hand might work against you because you're probably not expected to win, and your goal average will get worse. So I'm looking at that one there, and yes, Pucklechurch are like 8th in the league. However, they could drop, to 9th just because they might lose their games more emphatically and their goal average might go the opposite way. So I think it's always important to look at these goal averages when you are way behind on games, because it can really have an adverse effect. People think, oh, they've only got to get 1 point in their games in hand, but sometimes those points are not very likely, and it's more likely that you're going to lose games. I'm not saying Pucklechurch will lose the games. I'm not too sure who they're against, but you got to be mindful that just these games in hand aren't necessarily a good thing. That can work against you. But yeah, it's an exciting league. It's quite tight, isn't it? Across the middle of the pack. But I agree. It's very tough for that 11th place team to get anything anymore. Look at that -43 goal average. It doesn't give you a huge amount of confidence, does it?
No, it doesn't really. Not over 8 games. that's the kicker there. If that was 10 or 11, it's sort of 3 or 4 a game. It's a little bit more there. With 8, you're looking at more like 5, which is not a good record. Looking at Marine Academy there, John, they are doing quite well. Even though it was 2-2 against Pucklechurch, they beat Torquay United the week before, and Frampton Rangers as well. So they're undefeated so far in 2025. But like a lot of teams, Stevenage were the same, hadn't played since the beginning of December because of a lot of the postponements and things that were taking place over the weather. But just 2 games I've picked out from next week. You've got AEK Bocco against Sherborne, Frampton against Ilminster, and they're quite big. But the 3 games that are really sort of standing out, Pooltown play Bishop's Lydiard, which of course is quite big there. Bishop's Lydiard could pull themselves back into contention for staying in the league. But some bangers on the other one. Marine will play AFC St Austell, so you'd imagine that's going to be 3 points for them the way things are going. But Torquay will play Forest Green Rovers, so one of those 2 teams will drop out of the ability, possibly both if they draw, to take over Marine. So this is what we're talking about, little stories that are just going to be building up over the course of the next few weeks and coming to a head. It's a bit like when EastEnders gets towards its Christmas special. We're starting to advertise it now. You can see who's going to be in it, who's getting bopped over the head of the Queen Vic this year. That's where we are. Right, one last league to look at. Oh, go on.
No, I was going to say, would you feel comfortable there? So if you just goes one slide back, you was talking about that game between Pooltown and Bishop's Lydiard, as it's pronounced. There's a massive, there's a massive difference in the goal average there. So even though there's only 1 league position between them, to be minus 24, if you are that Bishop's team, are you going to be thinking to yourself, right, it's definitely possible that we can win that team above? However, Pooltown haven't really conceded that many in the grand scheme of things, have they, to be only -6? If you're like in that position, like 2 from bottom, to only be -6, I think that's quite good. So I think Pooltown will have a lot of confidence going into that game, not just based on Bishops being below them, but -6 goal average isn't that bad, considering you're quite low there, if that makes sense.
No, you're not wrong. They're conceding sort of 3, 5, 7. Looking at the way their games are going in terms of scoring, 3-0 seems to have been their best one, and that was against Frampton Rangers. So, not scoring a huge amount. So, very good point there, John. Indeed. I'm looking at the final league. It's the Southern Premier, and I found this one really interesting because we've been talking about not having a lot of teams in some leagues. There's only 10 in this league, and unlike everywhere else on full time, there's no line to tell us where the relegation zones are going to be this year. Now, I'm assuming, could there have been more than 10 teams when they started and so just decided they're not going to relegate this year? But that would be horrific because there are 2 teams below in terms of Division 1 North and Division 1 South. I used my common sense and saw there was a line for promotion for both North and South for the top team, and stuck that line where I have, because that's what my logic and common sense and 37 years of watching football has suggested to me, but it doesn't make me right. So it could well be wrong. But Ascot United, top of the table, 31 points, 8 points clear of Wycombe Wanderers, which, again, when you start transferring these names over to the men's team, seems ludicrous that Ascot United could be that far ahead of Wycombe Wanderers. But there they are. So, unlike a lot of leagues, this one's really already settled. It seems to have worked out whereabouts it's going. I can't see, barring an absolute capitulation, it looks as though Ascot United will be moving into the WNL. But, and it's a big but, what you have down the bottom is massive. And I just wanted to take a moment really to talk about this. We're not going to go too much into the league itself. You've got Bad Shot Lee, which kind of sounds like the sort of thing you would say to somebody called Lee if they missed the goal. And then you've got Chelsea just above them on 2 as well. It's just a goal difference. But then you have Reading. And this kind of brings around a lot of what's been spoken about in the Championship. The Championship obviously only has 11 sides. And that's because Reading, for those that aren't aware or who have been under a rock, were relegated, and just basically got rid of and pushed down into Tier 5. And this is the league, I believe, that Reading ended up in. And so, although they've got games in hand on the team around them, again, as you said, you look at the goal difference, you're looking at a side that was a championship side that's just been ripped out, gutted, and all of a sudden, their results are not looking too good. They did just beat Chelsea 2-1, which is massive for them because that is obviously where they got their 3 points from. Had they not won that game, they would currently be bottom of the table. So that in itself is quite something. But what did you make of the whole Reading situation, I suppose, really is the last thing, because that's a hell of a drop to be in the Championship and then to come in at Tier 5. Do you think it was right? Do you think maybe they should have just gone straight to Tier 6 and tried to work their way up that way? Was it the right thing, the wrong thing? Because the politics when it comes to putting teams in leagues doesn't always seem to be the easiest. And I know there's geographical things, but looking at it, there's an argument that maybe they should have been in Tier 6.
It's a massive shame. There's obviously some sort of criteria out there. So if they want to apply for Tier 5, they must have had to, tick a few boxes, whether that be budget or, facilities or something there. They wouldn't just be able to go into Tier 5 for the sake of it. However, to drop out to the whole of the National League as well, Tier 5 is obviously the highest of the regional league. So it might have just been a case of, okay, well, you're not qualified for a National League place, but you are qualified for a regional league place. I'd be looking at that and I'd be purely just looking at playing the teams around you. So, I know the situation well with one of the teams that I follow. You know that it's about damage limitation against the majority of the teams in that league. But if you do want to build, to stay in the league, win the teams around you, then you might be able to attract players that's potentially not getting much game time in that league. Get yourself a good qualified coach who can develop some of these players. Look at some of the younger players in the area. Can you develop those and then start building a sustainable Tier 5 team? But the key is for me, if you do stay in Tier 5, what's your plan next year? Because you're already losing, two of the teams that's below you. So you're the team that's necessarily, that's the bottom of that league. You've got to put a plan together. Okay, it's okay hanging on. It's okay surviving this season. But you could potentially be a negative 100 goals, next year. So okay, fight this season. However, what's your plan to make sure that you're not at the bottom of the league next season?
No, absolutely. And again, very interesting because Reading obviously used to play in the Reading ground. It was a big old place. They now play at Slough Town. And I've been to Slough Town, and that is, I used to live in Slough, so it's a very nice place. And I don't know what they've done to the ground since I was last there, but it's a lot smaller. So a very, very interesting place for them to be. Only 2 games happening next week. So there are League Cups and such like going on. But Badshot League will be facing Oxford, so it's an opportunity to escape out of the bottom 2. And of course, Woodley will be facing Ascot, which is, again, big thing for Ascot. They win that, they are a step closer to glory. So that could be quite a thing. I've noticed I hadn't actually changed the points on there. It says that Ascot are on 27 and they're not. They're on 31. So didn't change that one, clearly. We nearly made it all the way through a show without a single mistake on a slide, and it's just then that I've noticed it, thinking that looks a lot closer than it does on full time. There we go. What can I say? Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and there we go. John, it's been a whistle-stop tour, and between the two of us, I think we've done quite a good job.
Yeah.
Just goes to show Tier 5 just as exciting as the WSL in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely. I always talk more about regional leagues and FA Women's National League now than I do WSL and Championship. So loads of stories. It's just that no one actually knows the stories until they get told. There is a lot of stories still to come out as well. So a lot of things are happening behind the scenes, and can't wait to talk about them.
Absolutely, and we can't wait to bring those stories across as well. So there we go. It's still United 1, City 2. So I suppose the two of us are going to go and watch the last 20 minutes of that and bite our nails in the hope that United can beat City and make it through to the next round. But meanwhile, it's just left to us to say well done, Gaza, once again for your videos. Absolutely superb. And of course, a massive thank you to you, John, as well for your time this evening. Can't wait for next week. We will be back. It's going to be live every single week, Wednesday evening, not always at 7:30 necessarily. It might be at 7, but always on Wednesday evening. I can't wait. And we'll see you, therefore, next Wednesday for another Lower League Lingo. Number 21, don't you know? See you there.